It's our pleasure to welcome in Washington State Athletic Director Anne McCoy here to Puck Sports. Anne, Happy New Year to you, and thank you for doing this.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Happy New Year to you.
Well, there's a lot to cover. A lot has happened here in the last few weeks in regards to Washington State athletics. It's been a busy time for you, has it not?
It has been, yes, never a dull moment, one might say, but that's okay. All mostly good stuff. So
I want to get to, we want to focus a lot on Jimmy Rogers and the decision to go with Jimmy Rogers. And I think a lot of people would be interested, like how that process works and how he came on the radar. I want to go back, though, and I just want to revisit how we got to Jimmy Rogers. And that would be, of course, the departure of Jake Dickert going to Wake Forest. Going back to that day that you found out. And I had asked you a question on the press conference, if you felt betrayed by the decision. You paused and you said you did not feel betrayed, but let me rephrase it. Do you feel that the situation, how it was handled, could have been handled better by Jake himself and then maybe even Jake's representatives?
I would say I would have loved for Jake and I to have that conversation earlier, is what I would say. And I think hindsight, Jake would probably agree. I think there was probably a lot going on right then that he was, working through, and first time going from being a head coach to being another head coach, somewhere else, and maybe how those things are. And certainly his representatives and I had had some conversations, which I appreciated. But I think Jake and I have a good relationship, and I feel like we had kind of been, partners in going forward with, WSU football. And so, absolutely. I think that would be the one thing that I would love, but I think he would agree, honestly, if he were here with us.
Because you probably would have liked the opportunity. Hey, if we can counter or up with something to keep you, we'd love to do so.
I don't know that would have made a difference relative to the timing. I think at that point, Jake had made up his mind that this was an opportunity that, he was either going for or had accepted, at that point. And even if we had talked before he had accepted it, I just feel like he knew that we had put in place everything that we could relative to his ability to be successful at Washington State. And, I think at that point, perhaps, it was just time. He was maybe just ready. So I don't know if it would have made a difference, honestly.
We'll get to in a second. Do you think if the financial situation were better at the university for himself and maybe for his assistants, do you think he's still there?
Oh, I don't know, because I know that, I think some of the transfer portal pieces and just a lot of those, the ever-changing landscape of college athletics and kind of where Washington State University, is a bit in flux with the, change of the, growth of the Pac-12 and everything else. I think at the end of the day, for the sitting head football coach at Washington State University, it probably had been a long couple years. If you look at everything since he had been at Washington State University, from the day he started till the day he left, I think he really, went through a lot and, saw a lot of things that, he saw as positives, but a lot of things too, maybe that he was just ready for a fresh start.
Since we spoke, or since you spoke in the press conference of when Jake left, it was reported by John Canzano that there was a $2 million gift or $2 million of money that was allocated from the Board of Regents to athletics. Mm-hmm. But somewhere in between the Board of Directors allocating that money to Kirk Schulz, the president, and there's also been reported upwards to $4 million, that it just got lost into the shuffle, that was not communicated to you, which you then stated, listen, if we had that and known that, we would have been able to use it for the football program. And I think a lot of people want to know, who are alums and fans of the school, want to know how does that happen? How does it happen to where the Board of Regents allocates this money, which would have been beneficial to you and beneficial to the football program, not get communicated to the athletic director?
I think the way that I could answer that to be the most honest and transparent is I join them in wondering, honestly. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know what happened from the time it was communicated, how it was communicated, to when, I learned of it that day in an email exchange, after Jake's departure or, announcement. And so I wish I knew as well. because I would do whatever I could to go back and help change any of that. But at the end of the day, now that we know that we have at least an additional $2 million to work with, we certainly have a strategic plan to spend it and invest it where we need to invest it, football included, of course. And so I honestly have no idea. I wish I did.
Have you had conversations with President Schulz about why that wasn't communicated to you earlier?
We have had a chance to talk about it, at least briefly. And I think, again, I don't want to speak for him or the board. It sounds like, where, his impression of where things were versus theirs. But honestly, I don't want to sound like a cop out, but I don't necessarily want to be in the middle of it. I only know at this point we have an additional $2 million, which we are extremely grateful for. And beyond that, I don't, I'm sure it's two versions of a story, and I'm not one of the versions, so I honestly don't know.
That lack of communication, though, has to be frustrating.
It is. Yeah, very much so.
Where does your relationship stand with the Board of Regents, and where does it stand with Kirk Schulz?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would characterize the relationship with both, the board and with the president as good. I am focused on what I feel like my role is as the director of athletics here at Washington State, and that is, to educate, fight, advocate, for our department. At the end of the day, we've taken significant budget cuts. We need to get that money put back. And, we're doing whatever we can and what we can control within athletics, whether it be through, season tickets or donors or anything else. But at the end of the day, as we often talk about, the 3 or 4-legged stool, and institutional support has to be one of those legs. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to help educate and communicate those that are in a, position to make a decision on that. And at the end of the day, I may be happy with the decision. I may be unhappy with the decision, but I can only control what I can, which is providing people with the data and to be honest, the value that athletics has at a university. We can be a very integral part of the strategic, priorities in helping promote the entire university. And instead of being pitted, as athletics versus academics versus, whatever else, to me, we're all Washington State University. Hard decisions have to be made that some of us are going to like, some of us aren't. But at the end of the day, we have to believe in, what's best for the overall university. And we want to be part of that. I mean, we don't want to be seen as a problem or a drain or anything else. We want to be seen as, part of the thing that can help make Washington State University continue to grow and thrive.
Do you think current leadership has made it, though, athletics versus academics?
Oh, I think a lot of the circumstances have made it that way, with all of the changes, and the fact that, if I could go back in time, I'd go back in time a decade to the institutional support not being peeled back when the Pac-12, revenues were supposed to be higher, because at the end of the day, we used to have a lot more institutional support, and then you wonder if we'd be in this position to begin with. And so, I think hard decisions often, create a lot of consternation, but I think I guess I'm more of an, open, get it out on the table, talk it out, and at the end of the day, kind of all move on kind of person. And, so that's how I hope we could be going forward for sure.
I recall the late Elson Floyd once saying about the importance of athletics, but really, the importance of football, right? Because that's the beacon of every athletic department. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, or maybe there was a direct quote, was, it's the window into your university. And I think many people share that. How do you? I know you try to do that. How do you illustrate that point, though, to a president or to a board of regents who may not see it that exact way?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a tricky, kind of undertaking, if you will, because you're right. At the end of the day, we feel like athletics generally is a window in, but the university certainly is the house. You know what I mean? Like, we're not the whole piece. You know what I mean? We just get people there to kind of, peek in maybe. And, I think when you look at, applications and enrollment and, after events like the Apple Cup, week, and applications were up 1,500 from what I understand. When you look at game day, enrollment was never higher than it was the following week, or following year after, Gardner Minshew, the Alamo Bowl, and game day coming to Pullman. Those sorts of things make an impact. People talk about, I came to campus for a football game and I knew right then that's where I wanted to go to school, or God, I loved my time at Washington State. I went to the basketball games or soccer or football or whatever. That's what athletics can do. I mean, I think we can help with the student experience, with retention, with recruitment, but at the end of the day, people are here also to get an education. And so those pieces, have to be strong as well. And so I just think it's a hard, it can't be us versus them. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it has to be part of, but a lot of it is intangible. I think to your question, that's what makes it hard is you can say, well, gosh, remember that feeling you had, when, whatever overtime win, or remember when you were, in the Greek system and your whole house would come to the games on a, Thursday night at basketball or a Saturday football game or whatever. But to quantify that a lot of times is hard for people that don't want to support it. It's like, well, show me the data, show me that, well, are we going to say we're the only reason enrollment goes up? I don't know, but we're certainly a piece of it.
Right.
And so I think partially people are either looking for reasons, to support something, or, reasons to cast, disparaging remarks at somebody. In some ways you have your mind made up, I feel like.
Do you have a voice on who the school picks as a new president?
Not really. I mean, as part of university leadership, we do have an opportunity to be involved with the finalist candidates in kind of a group setting. And so certainly some feedback there. So I guess, to the degree that's, involvement in, but largely the Board of Regents will be the group that picks the next president.
Okay, let's move on to Jimmy Rogers. I'd love to know how did he land on your radar? Because, there's this. I always think of Bill Moose. I remember Bill Moose telling me the story one time when he had Mike Leach. He'd always say, I'd always keep a piece of paper. I'd write names down that would come that I would watch over the years or that year, and guys that I would be interested in as a football coach. And then, of course, you have search firms now as well that assist you and other athletic directors around college football. How did Jimmy Rogers come on Anne McCoy's radar?
Yeah, I'd say for me, both of what you described was the case with him in particular. Certainly somebody, that I'd been, watching and admiring from afar relative to the good work he'd been doing, and just up and coming coaches and just, kind of how he seemed to be wired. I'd never met him before. I didn't know him, but certainly, but also someone that the search firm or also a lot of other people, he was a name that, we heard multiple times from people that, as were several others, of people that, were really candidates from the start. So I would say he was already on the radar, but then certainly only, strengthened his position on that radar the more we got to interact with him.
So it was someone that you had in mind before a search firm came to you and said, hey, we have these lists of candidates. And then you're like, well, Jimmy Rogers is on that. Well, I have him on my own list.
Absolutely.
What, when the process, how fast was it when you identified him and other candidates, and he's not the only one, you identified him. How fast was it when you identified him to the point where you actually hired him?
So we got the search firm hired and in place, as you mentioned, so they could help with a lot of vetting and kind of being the, landing spot of a lot of inquiries and kind of initial, vetting through. But, so we got them in place, pretty quickly. We got up to speed with phone calls. We did Zoom interviews with quite a number of people, some in-person interviews. And so, I would say from start to finish, probably about a week. But then we postponed making an official offer or the announcement until after the bowl game. And so I felt really strongly the more I thought about the search and the process and just having talked with the players and the coaches that were still here to really be able to, insulate that bowl game as much as possible and allow the team to really focus on that. And to be honest, be allowed that, if you hire a coach or you get too much in the weeds of, all of it 2 days before the bowl game or the morning of something breaks. So I felt pretty strongly then as the process unfolded that I knew we wouldn't make an offer before the bowl game. We may know who the person was, but they wouldn't know they were the one. And we wouldn't make a formal offer until after the game. And that's what we did. Saturday morning is when we made that offer.
So before they took the field, you knew Rogers was going to be the guy.
Yes. At least, again, no official offer, or he did not know that. But yes, in my mind, he was the one we'd be calling Saturday morning.
Did you fly him down to San Diego?
We did.
But that was on top of having a Zoom interview as well with him prior to that?
Yes.
Was he the only one that flew down? There was reports in, this crazy industry, people, tracking flights all over the place. It was reported that you had also flown Vigen down from Montana State. Is that accurate? Did he meet with you in San Diego as well?
The only thing I would say is Jimmy's not the only person we had an in-person interview with, if you don't mind me.
Sure.
Evading that a bit.
Yeah, no, I understand it. Was Jim Mora, was Jim Mora a serious candidate at UConn?
Same with who we brought in. I just would rather not really discuss who are actual candidates. To be respectful of current situations and, then the speculation of, oh, why wasn't he the one or, that person or whatever. So I would just say we had a lot of qualified, interested candidates of a variety of experiences, sitting head coaches, not sitting head coaches, et cetera. It was a really broad pool.
But Rogers was the only one that you had actually formally offered the head coaching job to.
Yes, that's correct.
Formally
or informally, he was the only one we offered. He was the guy.
Okay. Why'd you land on him? What set him apart from the others?
Yeah, I think we'll just say at the end of the day, baseline, obviously, everyone we talked to, we felt like had the potential to do the job, just from a pure, football acumen, background, et cetera, obviously. I think what set Coach Rogers apart, really was at the end of the day, when we talked with our current team and a lot of former players and a lot of people around the program, a lot of common threads that were all things that we had a group of kind of administrative team here in athletics that, worked through this process together. And when we talked at the beginning about what we thought, but none of us played football at Washington State, that we're part of that group. And so then to talk to some people who were either currently playing or, had played, but we all had common themes about someone who's, very relationship based, very hardworking, very roll up your sleeves, places a priority on, kind of relentless learning, very competitive, just all of these sorts of human qualities and how a program is built, and just seeing what he had built and been part of, not only as a student athlete, but as an assistant and then a head coach, and really being involved, really extensively with the head coach that he ended up taking over for, and just to hear how people described him and talked about him and what we saw both in the Zoom and in our in-person meeting with him, just really like you could immediately picture him coming in and being Washington State football, and just his, again, worried about all the things that can build a strong foundation for a program, and loyalty and human caring, and just a lot of the things that, you may or may not think were the things that our current players cared about, but because I think that, they really did have a good team culture and a lot of those sorts of things, and they don't want to see that hard work, kind of go by the wayside when a coaching transition happens. And so I feel like those were a lot of the factors, so to speak, just, very hardworking, the fact that in this day of college athletics, the fact that he seems to be a relentless and perpetual learner, and hearing how he was described even as a student athlete and as an assistant was extremely appealing, because I think you have to have somebody, who is going to continue to learn and adapt and, learn how to maximize all of the positives and the angles, to be honest.
And I would assume for a lot of these players, whose stability has got to be something that has got to be a priority. I mean, some of them, I don't think there's any one left with the Leach era. That would have been a couple of years ago. But I mean, there's been a lot of transition, from Leach to Rolovich and then Rolovich to Dickert. I mean, they've seen a lot of coaches in their tenure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely someone who understands that and I think appreciates it and, will be very, he's very authentic. And that's one of the other things I should have mentioned. It's just at the end of the day, he's going to talk about all the reasons why Pullman is a great fit for him, why Washington State, that I think he and his family are very, would be very particular or selective about what would actually make them move, and take another opportunity because all the things that are a priority to our team and kind of to your point, that stability and that feeling of, okay, we're going to take a deep breath and, feel comfortable letting it out and just really focusing on the future and moving forward. And I think he gives that certainly that sense and that feel.
Are there personality traits that are similar between he and David Riley? I think of the two hires you've made. One, they're young, lower level coaches, but with a lot of success at that lower level. Do they share similar traits?
They do. I think they really do. And that a lot of what you described, they've had a lot of success. Where they've been at the schools they were at for a long time. They've really grown and, worked their way up and through, but also to see how they interact with their players, to see interact with their staff and all of those sorts of things. It's interesting you say that because we even talked about that this morning as he's starting to get, some staff members that are in town, just they see all of the possibilities, they see all of the potential and they're just so excited to just roll up their sleeves and get going and get to work. And that was very much like Dave Riley when he and his staff came in as well. So I would say, yes, a lot of parallels.
Are the finances representative of a school that is trying to find almost a Moneyball like effect, baseball with how the Oakland A's did it? Because it's, we talk about the personality traits, but financially it seems to be a parallel as well. David Riley and both now Jimmy Rogers will be making significantly less than their predecessors. What does that speak to? Does the school have enough resources to compete in this new age of college athletics, or those hirings, yes, good candidates because of what they have done, but also we had to find somebody that was also cost effective for this university?
I guess the first thing I would say is we did not limit our pool based on the salary we were willing to pay. And so I don't want there to be a perception of, that the salary dictated what the pool was going to be. I think at this point, what we determined was once we knew who the successful candidate was, what was an appropriate salary to pay them first year coming in. It's very similar to David Riley. And then invest in the things that they felt were important to invest in immediately, but then know that we're going to continue, to grow. And I think we do have what we need to compete right now, 100%. I think we need to be very intentional about talking about the future and funding and what our budgets are going to look like. But for right now, and I would say, we've put $1 million more in the assistant salary pool than would have been in there before. And so it's really looking at each case as an independent piece and not paying more than is necessary at that particular moment for any individual piece, if that makes sense.
It does. I know your time is valuable. I just have a few more things, and then we'll be on our way. The assistant pool money, say competitive, will be on par with what it's been in the past.
Yeah, so it's going to be $4.5 million going forward, and as you'll recall, it was slated to go to 3.5 this January, and so that has been reallocated back to $4.5 million. I think we were at about 5.2 maybe in the last, they go January to January contracts. And so we feel good about where we're at right now because there's going to be a little bit different numbers of positions too, I think. So again, really funding what Coach Rogers feels like is the priority right now. And then, continuing to evaluate going forward.
Any talk right now ongoing of a David Riley extension? Or too early? We have to wait till the season plays out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly something, to be honest, once we've gotten through the last 2 weeks, something that's been very much on my mind and then had to go slight, I don't want to even say back burner. We'll say that awkward middle burner, for a little bit. But yeah, I think very much he has done a phenomenal job, coming in and really, and that's honestly, and I'm glad you asked that, because I think it's part of what my mindset is really, you hire people at fair and appropriate salaries, but then the intent is, as people, have success, as the programs continue to grow or build wherever they're at, depending on which program it's at, is really to continue to invest. And so to not pay, you want to be able to have those resources to continue investing. So it's 100%, yeah, absolutely on my mind.
There's always going to be other ways to add revenue. Beer sales at Martin Stadium next year, yes or no?
Hopefully. Can I get a third option for hopefully?
Hopefully. Okay.
We're working on it. But yeah, I think I've heard from many, many people it's a priority. I know it's been a thing over the years, forever. But I think it is an important potential, not only revenue source, but fan amenity that's extremely important for us to get done.
Last thing, are we closer to an 8th team for football in 2026? For Pac-12 expansion? No,
the focus is still on the media rights, and so there's been no additional work done, at least that I'm aware of right now, on an 8th member. Okay. I think the focus is get the media part in place to know the money piece, and then go after the 8th person.
Thank you for your time. You've been it's been wonderful catching up with you. I know it's been very busy for you. Anne McCoy, Washington State Athletic Director, joining us here on Puck Sports, pucksports.com. Thank you, Anne.
Great, thanks. Go Cougs.